Hey there, yarn bestie. This is Gia from Hubby, and you're listening to Skein and Tell, the podcast that unravels it all. From the threads between creativity and chaos to building precious communities one stitch at a time. We've all had that moment where we think, wow, I really am in a yarn cult. You've got the stash, you got the devotion, the group chats full of people who speak only fiber content and hook sizes and so forth. But what if I told you that back in the 70s, that energy was real? Today's episode is a deep dive into the crochet cults of the 70s. And no, I don't mean some evil overlord with granny square robes. I'm talking about the real communities that popped up across the US, where crafting wasn't just a hobby, it was a movement. And a whole lot of acrylic yarn. Let's go. So let's rewind a reel to the early 70s. Peace, love, and polyester. The Vietnam War was obviously still raging. Nixon was in the White House. Watergate just around the corner. Country exhausted, divided, completely disillusioned with the so-called American dream. But a wave of young people, also kind of nicknamed hippies, we know them, began to reject the system altogether. And how do you do that in 1972? Well, you pack your life, you ditch the suburbs, and you move to a commune. Now, these intentional communities weren't just places to crash. They were experiments in alternative living. People were growing their own food. They were raising goats, meditating, learning herbalism, and they were obviously crafting. So you had places like the farm in Tennessee and Black Bear Ranch. So the farm in Tennessee was a spiritual commune founded by Stephen Gaskin that combined pacifism, midwifery, soy milk, and some serious crochet energy. While the Black Bear Ranch in Northern California, they had kind of like this motto, free land for free people. Now, these places were rooted in community, but they also needed to be practical. You couldn't just run to Target if you wanted to get a baby hat or a baby blanket, right? So enter fiber arts. Now, crochet was perfect for the commune lifestyle because it didn't need electricity, just a hook in your hands. It was obviously portable, so easy to teach, adaptable to any yarn or questionable hand-spun plant fiber. It fit the vibe. It was expressive and it was rooted in tradition. So yarn in the 70s was often acrylic. And its plastic fantastic sheen just added to the psychedelic edge. Now, let's just say, real talk here, okay? What were they making? And from what I could research, they were making everything, okay? They were making granny square vests layered over flared jeans. They were doing crochet bikinis with obviously zero structural support, but maximum flower power. They were making blankets with circle motifs, plant hangers, lots of plant hangers actually, and the most surprising of all, macrame hammocks, sometimes with cats in them, but often with humans. So it wasn't just the women. In these communities, traditional gender roles were often flipped or even dismantled. Men crocheted, women chopped wood, everyone raised babies and made yogurt, and, the hook knew no boundaries. So in these communes, one thing to note is that they were actually not crafting in isolation, okay? They were part of a very broader counterculture movement. So many were inspired by kind of like back to the land writings like the Whole Earth catalog, which included DIY guides and fiber arts patterns and even articles on communal weaving techniques. There was also kind of like a spiritual thread. In some communities, making things by hand was seen as a sacred act, as a return to nature, an escape of materialism, and, living in harmony with earth and with each other. So that was actually quite cool that it wasn't just like the aesthetic that we're going for. It was definitely a cultural cross-stitching, if you want to call it like that. Welcome to Keep Calm and Craft On, where we share stories from our community to our community. These are the moments that remind us of how powerful yarn can be, not in just what we make, but in how we heal, connect, and carry on. So here's a story that was sent to me a little while back. Let's just read it out. I'm a long-time Hobbii fan, and excited to listen to the new podcast. You mentioned you were looking for stories, and I have one. So I started crocheting in 2021 because I have OCD. And my OCD had gotten to a point where I knew I needed to do something about it. For well over a decade, I've been pulling my hair out. And I had read about how crocheting or knitting can help keep your hands busy. And I haven't put down my hooks and needles since. Since 2021, my hair has fully recovered. I have taught myself to crochet and knit, and it has been the best decision I've made in my life. It has helped my other OCD-related illnesses as well as my anxiety and depression. It has changed my life for the better, and I don't know where I would be without knitting and crocheting. Thank you for all you do. Wow. So it's a short one, but to the person who sent this in, thank you so much for taking the time to trust us with something so vulnerable and also very, very inspiring. I mean, reading your words, the first thing that comes in mind is a wave of admiration, because you didn't just pick up crochet or, knitting just to pass time as a little hobby, right? You actually picked it up almost as a lifeline, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like you picked it up as a way to calm your storm, to reclaim yourself. And I feel like that takes a lot of courage. So it takes a lot of heart. So that I have a lot of admiration for that. And the fact that you've been living with, I think you wrote it here in the email. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but trichotillomania for over a decade, which is pulling on your hair. Wow, that's that's a lot. And that you've decided that one day enough is enough. I'm going to try something new. And then it worked out. And I feel like that is, once again, super powerful and so very inspiring. And I feel like not only did you try, but you actually didn't stop after that. And I feel like that's, once again, a story of resilience and of healing and showing up for yourself again and again. And I love that your hair has fully recovered, and that you are also recovering, and that you're building these new habits, these new tools to help you cope. And I think that is what this craft is all about. So I feel like we all have to learn from you. I need to learn from you, because I've been trying to ditch biting my nails all of my life. It's probably because of some sort of anxiety I have that I'm not fully embracing right now. But it is so hard to stop. I mean, I know that it's not as severe as maybe pulling on your hair, or maybe it is, because I'm sure that some people, some people get actually very hurt by biting their nails. I know that sometimes I bite into them quite hard. It gets a little bloody. So, I mean, I feel like this story, even though very short, probably resonates with so many other people, and that you're teaching me and you're teaching us that it is not impossible to try to find new tools to overcome these challenges. and yeah, that you're proof that craft is therapy or medicine or however you want to call it. And I know that there's a lot of people silently struggling, and I'm definitely one of them with my nail biting. And you're reminding us that you're not alone. We're not alone. And that there's hope, that even in dark moments we can reach and get our hands on a tool that can also make something beautiful out of. So thank you from all of us. Thank you from me. Thank you for sharing and from being here and turning all of your struggles into purpose. So keep calm and craft on. We're right here with you. And if you have a story you want to share, send it my way, bestie, to jaya@hobi.com. I would love to hear from you. All right, that was all from this week's Keep Calm and Craft On. And now to our main subject. Now let's talk more about crochet in the 70s. Yeah, now here's where it gets spicy. So by the 70s, a second wave of feminism was sweeping across the US. This movement was more about autonomy, about financial independence, about shared domestic labor, and yes, reclaiming all of the things women have been told weren't valuable. So that is where fiber arts, including crochet, bursts into this feminist spotlight. So for generations, crafts like knitting or sewing or crochet, they were dismissed as women's work. They were seen as hobbies, for housewives, as passive pastimes meant to keep your hands busy. While dinner simmered on the stove. But in the 70s, though, no. Women took those crafts back. They didn't just want to pass the time, They wanted to redefine what those crafts meant. So they did that by making statements through the clothes they were making. Crocheting your own clothes was not just a fun little project that they were doing. It was a radical movement. You didn't need money to shop at a department store from your husband. You didn't have to rely on companies that ignored and exploited women workers. You didn't need approval from fashion magazines to tell you what was in. So when women crocheted their own clothes back then, they were pretty much saying, I will not buy into the system. I will make my own. It was the kind of like the blend of DIY fashion, with liberation. Women were, crocheting wild, expressive garments, fringe shawls, floor-length vests, rainbow sweaters, and full outfits stitched together with joy and defiance. And these weren't just cute projects. They were acts of resistance against consumer culture that told women what to wear, what to look like, who to be, and so forth. We interrupt today's episode to bring you What's Trending. Buckle up, bestie, because we're dipping our knitting needles and crochet hooks into something smooth, rich, and oh so sippable. It's cozy, it's chic, and it's everything we didn't know we actually needed. So here's What's Trending. Okay, bestie, the color gods have spoken. And the 2025 official hue is Maca Mousse. That is right. Pantone said, earthy elegance, but make it wearable. And honestly, we are quite obsessed. Now, this color is that first warm latte on a cold morning. It's soft, it's grounding, and it's full of vintage soul. Now, Maca Mousse is not just a brown. She's a whole vibe, okay? She's a quiet luxury girlie. She's cozy cool meets sophisticated neutral. The yarn world heard the memo loud and clear. Let's get a little nerdy, okay? Why maca mousse? Why do we suddenly choose a shade of brown as the color of the year, right? I know that there was a little bit of a, shock from the people when they were like, oh, but that was like, wasn't that like ages ago when the Kardashians were like, no. It's 2025, babe. It's 2025. So color psychology and cultural trend forecasting actually play a huge role in how Pantone picks their color of the year. So every December, color experts from the Pantone Color Institute analyze global influences. And we're talking runaway shows, and we're talking climate anxiety and tech interfaces and political moods and, social media aesthetics. So in 2025, all signs pointed to one thing. We were craving, and we are craving, stability. We're craving comfort, and we're craving a return to the natural world. Now, maca mousse hits that perfectly. It's an earthy neutral that feels grounded and calm, but still luxe, still wearable. Psychologically, browns evoke a feeling of security and warmth, and they remind us of things like soil and coffee and wood and leather and really, really tactile, real world stuff. And after years of chaos and digital overload, our brains thought, you know what? I need cozy right now. Give me a cozy, please. And maca mousse is pretty much that visual equivalent, So in the yarn industry, that translates to maybe deeper palettes, also more tactile fibers like tweed and boucle, and designs that feel artisanal, that feel timeless, that feel personal. And this isn't just trend chasing. It's a color as self-care. We're definitely here for self-care. And we're talking skeins in rich truffle tones or heathered coffee blends, like marbled mochaccino magic. Marble mochaccino magic. Everyone from indie dyers to us, Hobbii, is rolling out so many beautiful fibers that whisper, slow down, sip your tea, swatch that sleeve again, it's fine, you've got the time. And I've seen a lot of designers that are pairing this kind of like maca mousse color with muted pinks, with mossy greens, with creamier neutral colors as well, so that you really get that woodland aesthetic, right? And now it's giving kind of like acorn chic, kind of like my shawl has a story, but I also like herbal tea, And yes, it does pair perfectly with a crochet mushroom pouch or a latte-hued beret with bubbles. And this trend is just, for the crafters that are craving a little bit of stillness in the stitch, a bit of comfort in the color palette, and maybe even, something to add to your wardrobe that says, I knit this while manifesting my best life, my calmest life. I needed the calm. And this is calm. So if your stash is feeling a little loud right now, or maybe your needles are yearning for something softer, deeper, and more, grounded, this is definitely your sign. Cast on something maca mousse. Wrap yourself in those earthy vibes. And know that neutrals can definitely have a whole personality. So all of that of beige is beep. I can't say it, but that little famous Sex and the City sentence that Mr. Big says to Carrie, that beige is beep. Well, think again, Mr. Big, she's the right dye lot, okay? So yeah. All right, well, that was all for What's Trending. And now back to our main topic. Now, like most beautiful things born out of rebellion and hope, the crochet collectives and fiber-fueled communities of the 70s obviously didn't last forever. By the late 70s or the early 80s, the dream was changing. The political tide was turning a bit. The counterculture was splittering. Life was a bit more expensive now, more digitized, more normal, as we call it nowadays. So many communes broke apart as people returned to cities. Maybe they started families or simply, burned out from the demands of the collective living. The once radical act of crocheting your own poncho lost its edge somewhere between the rise of MTV and invention of, shoulder pads maybe. But fiber arts slipped back into the realm of domestic again, and, mass production, unfortunately, won. Fast fashion took over, and DIY, well, that became something you didn't do because you needed it. You only did it because it was, there. So you needed a hobby. But here's the thing about fiber. It's really, really stubborn. It doesn't disappear. It just waits. It waits there in the dark. It waits for you. And so did the spirit of crochet cults. So even as society moved on, women and men who learned to crochet during those radical years never truly kind of let go of it. It was still kind of like there, lurking in the dark. Some of them became fiber artists. Others passed their skills down to their kids or grandkids. And some even started small businesses or taught classes in community centers or kind of quietly kept the magic, at home. But then something interesting happened. Doom, doom, doom. They're back. Around the 90s and early 2000s, a new generation, raised on tech but hungry for touch, aka me, started picking up the hook again. At first it was, blogging, then Instagramming, and then suddenly crocheting a tank top from recycled yarn while drinking oat milk latte and talking about mental health. It was cool again, and it was a movement. So let's just take a look at today's DIY culture really quickly. The grandchild of the crochet cults. Now look around today. You will see it. Clear echoes of the 70s fiber rebellion and modern maker culture. Sustainability is in. People are rejecting fast fashion in favor of handmade, slow fashion, and visible mending. Individuality is definitely sacred. So crocheters today aren't just following rules, they're making frogs in crop tops, mushroom with eyes, patchwork cardies for their 2-year-olds, and yes, the occasional disastrous hat, reminiscing the condom hat from previous episodes. But community is everything. Just like those fireside stitch circles in the communes, we now have, Discord groups, Facebook groups, TikTok trends, maker spaces where people teach, they learn, they laugh, they rage together with their hooks in their hands. They make a podcast called Skein and Tell. Even the activism is back, whether it's craftivism, climate awareness, body positivity. Fiber artists are out here protesting with banners, with yarn bombs, with handmade signs, just like in the 70s. And crochet is once again a way to reclaim space, identity, and joy. And today's makers, we may not be living in domes or growing lentils in a commune, but we are part of something just as radical. At least that's how I feel about it. And, we're saying things like, I don't have to buy it, I will make it. I don't need to fit your mold. I will make my own. I don't need perfection. I just need to create something that speaks about me and speaks to you. You know what I mean? So yes, the crochet cults of the 70s faded, but their legacy it did not. They gave us more than just wild color combos and hexagon vests. They gave us a blueprint that craft is political and that creativity is communal, and that making things with your hands is an act of self-respect. And now we are definitely living that legacy. Every time you crochet in public, every time you post your whip on social media, every time you teach a new friend to chain, every time you say, this was made with love and chaos and too much caffeine, you are keeping that spirit alive. You're part of this new era, this new movement, a new crochet coven, if you will. And honestly, that's a cult I would join any day. So sweetest bestie, next time you sit down and crochet, light a little candle for the wild ones who came before us, the ones who crocheted in yurts, who stitched their politics into ponchos, and who believed that craft could build a better world. Because it did. The crochet cults of the 70s weren't just about yarn, they were about freedom, about joy, and just saying, I can make something beautiful with my own two hands, and I don't need permission to do it. And honestly, that's a movement I'm happy to be part of right now. And yeah, thanks for joining me today on Skein and Tell. I hope that this episode made you laugh, think, or suddenly want to move to a field and start a crochet commune with me. Let's go! Let's talk, email me, tag me, message me, start a group chat called, the Yarn Coven. I'm definitely going to join that. All right, until next time, stay soft, stay subversive, and keep stitching your story. Okay, love you, bestie. Bye!